those who are just joining, today I'm going to do a live Q&A with Britton from Financial Advise Her. She is a registered investment advisor, and she has very generously agreed to address a bunch of your and my questions. I just want to give everybody a heads up that when someone is a registered investment advisor, they are bound by laws and regulations that are dictated by the SEC. And so there are certain things that she can't talk about. So she can't give you specific financial advice or recommend specific investments for you to make. So I just want to disclaim before we start. And it looks like Britton just joined, so she should be popping up momentarily. Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. Thank you again so much for agreeing to do this. And as promised, I just gave everybody the brief disclaimer about the laws and rules that you are bound by as a registered investment advisor.
No, I appreciate that. That's something that sometimes can get in the way of, doing things like this. Is I wish I could solve everybody's problems and give really specific advice to, as to how to plant the money tree in your yard or make that $1 million quickly. But obviously I can't do that. And even if I could, that would be wonderful. But thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. And again, thank you so much for joining us. Everybody submitted a whole bunch of questions, and I have kind of consolidated those, and we're going to run through the questions that people already submitted. And then if time permits, if you guys who are watching live have more, feel free to drop those in the comments, and we'll try to get to those too at the end of the conversation. So again, Britton, thank you, welcome. And maybe just to get started, it would be helpful if you could tell us a little bit about your background and what exactly it means to be a registered investment advisor.
Sure. So I, like Megan, I graduated from the University of Notre Dame in 2011. And I worked actually 6 or 7 years in the consumer product goods industry first before going into financial planning and investment advising. But I knew it was something I always wanted to get into. My dad is in the industry and we're actually partners now. And it was something that I had planned on, but to his credit, he wanted me to have a well-rounded background first. Because I did grow up learning a lot of this, but he thought it would be beneficial to get out there, really understand corporate life, understand what questions people have. And I'm so glad I did, because I think I have such a unique perspective to bring to the table now. And I am also a working mom. I have a 1-year-old son that I had last December, and he is the best thing in my entire life. And thank you. I knew I'd love being a mom, but it's blown my expectations out of the water. So,
and it definitely changes your perspective on a lot of things too.
It completely does. So, as a working mom, I had to understand, and I'm glad I had the background to know, okay, how do I take a maternity leave? How do I plan for that? How do I financially understand my childcare options, my budget as it comes to just affording this child in my life? And so it's really brought some interesting tidbits into my life. But given my background, I just have wanted to help so many other women with these kinds of issues, because one thing I've learned is that in this industry, only 15% of it is female in the financial advising industry. And I just think that's such a
which is, by the way, higher than in the institutional world.
Right. It's higher than it used to be. But when you think about other careers, attorneys, doctors, all those kinds of other things, there's a lot more parity there. So I'm really passionate about helping women understand that you can do this. This is something that, you don't have to just shy away from talking about your finances or leave it for your husbands or your spouses or partners or what have you to handle. So in my line of work, I really love working with female clients specifically, but I do help young families and help anyone who has questions, because I want to make sure that people can know their options first and foremost, kind of take away some of the mysterious, basically try to make them less overwhelmed. And I understand financial jargon can be really technical
and really intimidating.
Yeah, definitely very intimidating. So in my industry, and what I try to do daily is kind of just help people take a step back and say, all right, let's get to the root of why you have questions. What would you like to do with your life? Really understand your priorities and your passions so that we can build a sustainable path forward and invest along the way in order to help you afford to do that. So what I do every day is work with clients, and I kind of like to joke that manage expectations for a living, because I provide options, but I also kind of help take the emotional side out of it for a lot of people, who are money is so personal. But if I can do it behind the scenes and leverage my knowledge, leverage all my training, and leverage all the continued, education that I'm going through, I can hopefully make this something that you don't have to necessarily worry about. Similar to, I kind of liken it to having a doctor, right? Like, I need a doctor. I am not about to diagnose or deliver my own child or do all those types of things.
Right.
So I'm kind of a financial doctor, if you will. So I'm hopeful that, everybody out there who's busy pursuing their day-to-day life doesn't have to sit there and also at night cram in a bunch of knowledge about, which stock should I buy? Which investment strategy should I take? Which path makes the most sense? That's what I'm doing behind the scenes to hopefully make your lives easier so that you can trust in one resource and I can connect you to, the whole world, so to speak, from that angle.
I think that's a great explanation of how it works. One of the big questions I think that a lot of people have is, how much money do you actually need before you can come and meet with an investment advisor?
That's a great question. And it totally depends, is the short answer. Every single investment advisor has different required minimums, because they really want to establish a long-term relationship and they want to be efficient with their time and be efficient for you as well. Everybody has different minimums, so I highly encourage you to go online and kind of do some homework and meet with an advisor and ask those questions. But a good advisor should really look at you more for that long-term potential and your long-term relationship, and not see you as someone that's just kind of a transaction for right now. I guess I would say, if you have, call it $5,000 to $10,000 to start, that could be a really great place. But even if you have less than that, meet with someone, ask and get clarity on what it would take to even open a retirement account, or what should you do in terms of, something we do a lot of is even just providing a second opinion service and help people just take a look at, okay, how's your 401k allocated? We don't even manage that, but you probably are just honestly going into a default plan, or maybe not understanding the full breadth of the options available to you. We can help you with that. We can help you take a look at that and your insurance needs and all of those types of things. So don't think that a financial advisor is off the table, even if you only have a couple $100s to invest. Ask the question, go in and meet with them, and the right one should really look at you and say, hey, okay, this is what you have now, but let's get you to here. And I think that based on your income potential or based on your savings needs, we can definitely grow our relationship together. So don't be discouraged. Start as early as you can, and if you only have a limited amount of money to start with, don't let that stop you from meeting with people and at least asking the question.
I think that's great advice. And a phone call is free.
Right.
You can call and ask questions before you go in and meet with somebody. And on that same end, if you were to go in and meet with somebody like that, what should you, and then I realize this is going to be one of those where it varies too, but what should you expect to pay, and what are the different kind of compensation relationships out there when you work with a financial advisor?
Great question. So first thing I would say is, keep in mind that most good advisors do offer that free consultation up front. So like you said, a phone call is free. And if it's, a virtual phone call, an email, meeting with them in person, generally advisors won't charge for that first meeting, because it's kind of a win-win for both. They want to make sure it's the right fit for you. And then conversely, you're interviewing them. You want to make sure that it's the right fit for your family's needs and your priorities. And by the way, do you get along? Does this person seem like they're going to respect your boundaries and keep everything confidential as well? So
do they seem trustworthy?
Yes. Are they experienced? All those things. So definitely keep an eye out for that. But the way, kind of the industry standard that most advisors who and how they charge is, they generally charge a percentage of the assets that you invest with them. So most advisors are what are called, they'll advertise themselves as being fee-based. So let's say you have, call it $100 to invest, and I'm just using plain numbers.
Round numbers.
It's easy. Most advisors charge about 1% of that. So that's kind of the ballpark. That's where people start. And depending on how much you invest, what your relationship looks like, that can most likely be going down. So they charge potentially 0.8%. So there's a variety of different asset management fees, but in general, that's how advisors are incented. Some advisors charge via commission. So I would say just kind of be mindful of how your advisor is being compensated, because you want them to be incented to grow your assets, to actually grow what you have. Because for me, if I'm able to grow my clients, retirement assets substantially, that's for their advantage first and foremost. But second of all, I get paid as a percentage of that. So that's how I'm incented. Now, I'm not
to sell them
you
products.
something.
Right.
Exactly. I'm not proposing a certain mutual fund or stock that I want you to have because I get a kickback on the side. Yeah. There are stockbrokers where that's what they do. They sell these types of funds, so they do get a commission. But in general, most advisors who claim that they are fee-based just make money off of that flat fee as a percentage of your assets. And again, that can vary by advisor. So just, again, that's another great question when you meet with someone, and they should explain that to you. They're required to. So just be sure that you do ask that question so you understand.
Are there advisors out there where, like, if you're not ready to invest yet, but you, say you want to take that snapshot of, like, here's my 401k, I have this house, I have these student loans, like, are there, and maybe it's not an advisor, maybe it's more of a financial planner who kind of charge more by the hour, or where they're going to design for you a plan to help you get from, I'm not ready to invest yet, but I will be, in a couple of years when I dig out of this debt hole.
Yeah, no, I think that's why financial planners do exist, because there are people who say, hey, listen, I'm not even ready to invest yet. I have other, I got other things to get situated first. So financial planners really can help with that. A good investment advisor, my team has several financial planners as a part of our group. So we do that. If you meet with us and, we offer financial consulting because we get it. Sometimes people just don't have, they don't want a full financial workup. They don't want to invest with us, but they have a couple immediate questions. For example, your insurance needs just changed, or your life circumstances now warrant that you need to start planning for your child's education. I have a quick question on that, but I don't want to pay and go to an advisor for a long-term commitment. We work with people all the time who just will charge a flat fee, and they'll meet with us for 3 or 4 hours, and we'll work through all their most pressing needs, and then, they're free to do what they want. So there's a variety of different methods and approaches that you can take. Depends on what you're looking for. If you do know that, hey, I have a lot of student loans right now and a lot of obligations I need to tackle first, but at some point I'm going to want to start investing, then I would say potentially meet with an investment advisor and see if they'll provide you with a financial plan, so that way you're working with one person who knows you, knows your situation, gets everything into a good spot, builds you that foundation, so that way when you're ready to invest, you already have that relationship established. That's probably, something that I would advocate for, but again, financial planners are wonderful and can really help you with building that path, with taking the investment side out of it.
I think that's great, because I think, people are at all different realms of the spectrum. What is kind of, if you go in for that consultation meeting, what is a consultation meeting like? And what are some of the questions that my followers should go to and expect to have answered or to ask?
So when you go into that consultation, usually they're, 30 minutes to an hour, and it's really your time. Usually you will have the financial advisor who will meet with you, ask you a ton of questions. But in my opinion, what I do is I just try to listen. I'm trying to understand and ask questions to get a feel for your background. So when you go in, you'll want to know, what are your debt balances? What are your credit card balances at? What are your checking and banking account statements looking like? And you'll want to have a good idea of what, why you're there. So what's your why, so to speak? What are you hoping to do? And what does that look like both now and into the future? Let's say you have some debt you need to take care of now, and you also want to plan for a family in the future, but by the way, you want to retire someday, that's great. And and a good advisor will be able to kind of tease that out of you and help you talk through that and make it more specific. Instead of having a general goal, it's obviously more helpful, and you can make it more achievable if you can be more specific with your goals. But when you go in, you'll want to be prepared with, like I said, having that personal information about all your balance.
Knowing your balance sheet.
Yes, knowing your numbers, your credit cards, your credit score. And if you don't know that, that's easy to check and do that. So, that shouldn't stop you or anything. But really having that context up front helps the advisor understand how they can help you.
And when you say being more specific about your goals, do you mean like putting a timeline on it and putting a number on it, as opposed to just saying, I want to retire at some point.
Right, exactly. Being more specific, it's almost one of those things that as you speak it into existence, it happens. So,
Right.
we find if there's a husband-wife couple that come in and say, yeah, we want to retire in, South Carolina by the time we're 65. That's great, but let's take that a step further and define that. So when you say retire, what kind of house does that look like? Is it 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms? What location? What's the ballpark figure you want to spend on that? Do you have people you'd like to go travel? We kind of dig deeper so that you actually think through and say, oh, okay.
Plan your lifestyle and then quantify it.
Exactly. And truly, you can't plan for retirement without taking that step, because it's one thing to save money, but if you don't understand what that money is going towards, it may not last you very long.
Right.
So we work with a lot of clients to help them understand their budgeting needs for when they are in that retired stage of life, because although it may seem, light years away, it will come. And at some point you need to understand, okay, well, all these things I had in mind, being able to go fishing every day, to go travel, to, go out to eat and all these things, they do cost money, and you can plan for them accordingly as, the more specific you are and more in detail you can be about those conversations. It really does help.
And I think that's a great segue into kind of the next question, which one of the things that I get asked a lot, and it's kind of all, should I do this or should I do that? And it's kind of the prioritization. I think especially as moms and families, the financial overwhelm and all the different directions that your money can be pulled, it becomes very difficult to kind of cut through that noise and know what to prioritize. So how do you help clients think through that? Do you have a specific, like, you should do this first, this second, and not to give specific advice, but kind of how do you guide people through that prioritization process of, is it debt? Is it saving for college? Is it retirement? Is it paying off your mortgage? And how do you think through that?
Right. So it really is a balance of all of those things, because you can't just ignore one and hope it resolves itself, long term. Debt will not go away. Your child will have to be educated at some point, or have some sort of funding needs. So what we do is we really work with our clients to understand what their priorities are and what their debt balances are, what they currently have, and where they want to go. And we try to make them take advantage of the fact that time is on their side. So,
Right.
Retirement is something that, as an example, you can't save early enough, honestly, in our opinion. And, one thing that we find some of our clients come in and talk to us about is, saying, hey, I want to save for retirement. I want to save for my child's educational needs, but I'm finding it's very difficult for me to stomach paying for that when I also see the interest rates associated with my student loans or my credit card debt. And we get that. And that is a challenge for most Americans, honestly. It's a very real problem. The thing is, if you only have, we might work for solutions to find solutions where if you only can make a payment of, call it $500 a month towards any particular debt, one option we might look into is, okay, can we extend the payment window for your student loans from 8 years to 10 years, make your minimum payment lower, and then use that difference to fund your retirement. So over time, that's only really a year or 2 years difference in how long you'll pay for your student loans, and sure, interest will accrue. But to be able to use those 8 to 10 years to also stash money away for your retirement will make such a big difference in the long term because of the benefit of compound interest. So that's just one little case study, if you will. But
Right.
We do that a lot in terms of thinking through, what that balance should be. It's not an all or nothing approach. We wouldn't just say, typically, that, okay, well, student loans take precedence. Let's do that first, and then we'll do your house, and then we'll do this. If we did that, then by the time you actually got to
you'd have 5 years left to retire, to plan for
exactly.
retirement.
And I think that is an approach a lot of people do take, and then find themselves, panicking and thinking, oh gosh, well, now I need to work long into my retirement years, and now all this looks different. And it can be overwhelming. I don't blame anybody for getting to that point, because it's completely overwhelming, but it can be managed through with a plan in place, and by evaluating your options. So we really try to look at everything that's on the table and make smart decisions with that.
And I think the benefit of an investment advisor is that they have the background to know what your options even are, as opposed to just, we stare at it in a sense of overwhelm. That, like, hey, I can make a phone, like, this isn't set in stone. Like, we can make phone calls, we can make adjustments, we can, there are resources out there.
I kind of use that doctor analogy, and I can diagnose myself with a million different things by going on WebMD or by Googling it, but how much peace of mind I receive just by going into a doctor who can then say, okay, well, this has happened to you, so we've got this and this and this lined up to address it. That's worth it in and of itself, because I don't want to heal my own broken bones. I don't want to do all those things, and I'm not qualified. So I kind of use that analogy of, we want you to live your life, and we want to empower you to live that life however you see it and whatever that means for you. We just want to provide the tools and resources available so that, we can help you get there.
Is it pouring there? It sounds like it's pouring behind you.
Oh, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, no, I hear you.
So I'm coming from Cleveland, Ohio today, where I've been without power for the past 3 days because
my gosh,
it's snowing and windy and just,
we haven't had snow, but we've had crazy wind and trees down and power outages everywhere. So
we're in the same boat. So yeah, it kind of looks like I'm in a snow globe around me. Hopefully you can still see and hear me.
So we talked a little bit about how you help people quantify their different goals already. Mm-hmm. Maybe we'll skip that question. I'll go to the next one, and not to ask for specific product recommendations, mm-hmm. but what are some of the long-term saving options that you recommend for people that might not be what people are commonly, most people think about stocks, right? Fewer people think about bonds. Mm-hmm. And then I know there's other options too. What are some options that, you share with clients and they're like, oh, I've never heard of that before.
It does depend on the client, but something that I even just brought up to someone the other day is investing or parking your money, so to speak, in a treasury bill. So something that I think people don't really understand is if you have a ton of savings, that's wonderful. But if you park it in your savings account, you're really only earning, I think the average is 0.2% interest nationwide. That's the average. There's some banks that do offer up to 2%, and that's really kind of the exception, not the rule. Right. So we often tell clients, I think we have clients that come in, and say, I'm doing everything right. I have all this money parked away and stashed in my bank where nothing can happen to it. And while that's certainly, true to an extent, if you put that money into something that, like a treasury bill, where it's liquid, it's safe, it's backed by the government, you can get it out at any time, you might be able to earn significantly more interest on that, because the thing is, that's what the banks are doing with your money. Right. They're taking your money and they're profiting on the spread between the difference between the interest rate that they can get by putting your money into a treasury bill at about 2.2% was the last I checked. And then they're charging you 0.2%. So they're kind of making money on that. So that's something that we do.
So why not you make the money?
Exactly. It's
right.
So that's something that I feel like we do get a lot of those, aha moments from our clients as kind of an option for your savings. But that comes after we have other plans in place first. We always want to make sure that you're focusing on your retirement, whether that's through, capitalizing on your employer plan, if that's a 401k, 403b. It looks different for everybody, I know. But that's something that we want to make sure that's in place first. We want to make sure you have emergency fund savings for yourself. Just, should the horrible, awful, terrible things happen, you're protected that way and won't have to dip into your investment plan. And then there's also, different kinds of retirement plan options that you can look into depending on your income, your ability to contribute. All of those different things are available to you. So those are things that it's funny. I have a lot of clients that come in and say, oh, I didn't realize I could have taken advantage of that. Or I didn't realize I could have withdrawn that money and not paid on, the penalty on that. So I guess the point I'm trying to communicate is that you have so many options, and there are often things that surprise people. And another example would be, we have an insurance agency that we work with that will do a free audit on all of your insurance plans. And so clients often say, oh, I'm protected on that. I have jewelry insurance. I have.
Or I've been with somebody for years. Nobody's going to be less expensive than them. And often you'd be surprised.
Yeah. And I think what surprises people more often than not is what they think is covered may not actually be covered.
Isn't, right.
So as an example, something, like jewelry insurance, for example, if you have, call it a diamond or engagement ring, you might have jewelry insurance, but think that, gosh, if you were to lose that ring, you might get the value of that ring in just cash. Well, oftentimes the jewelry insurance companies will just send you a diamond similar, something that's kind of like what you had. And then you you're emotionally tied to that former diamond. You know, you no longer have the ability to go then purchase your own. It's just a different option. So,
and also the fact that your jewelry actually rises in value. So if you don't get it reappraised, you know, if you got married
right,
15 years ago and it's insured for
right.
what you insured it for when you got married,
Well, inflation alone,
you're not going to be
value.
getting the same ring back now.
Right. So that's another thing that we try to provide and financial advisors can do is help you look at your insurance and actually sift through
And
the
your assets. Yeah.
Yes. So those are kind of, you know, I'm trying not to get overly specific on which funds that we really like, but really investing comes down to stocks, bonds, and cash and how you diversify and allocate that. And, you know, along with those things, you want to make sure your options are really benefiting you from a tax standpoint. So as your income rises, you potentially relook at how you're investing to say, okay, what opportunities can I take advantage of so that whatever money I'm making on that, whatever gain I have, could potentially be taxed at a lower level than, you know, your income, your marginal rate. So something like a municipal bond is often something that people don't
People
know.
overlook. Yeah.
Right. And they seem like, oh, you know, so for example, those are bonds that maybe your local community is using to raise money to patch the roads or to build
your
the
school
local
system.
stadium. Exactly.
Yeah.
So a lot of people see that and think, okay, well, I'm not sure I can really earn any money on that. So why would I look into it? And that's a case where we have clients go, oh, I didn't realize. So by earning money on that, you know, oftentimes that money isn't taxed at the state level. And usually, you know, there's different tax ramifications that come from it, but definite advantages to consider. So again, the options you have are plentiful. It's just digging down to what works for you and do you
your
have
goals.
your goals, your time, how much time you have left, and then, you know, also your risk tolerance too. Because keep in mind, and this is again another thing that would be helpful to talk to an advisor about, is you want to be very specific about how much risk you can afford to take, and and the best thing to do would be to really quantify that and help your advisor. You don't want to go in and say, yeah, I'm pretty risky. I'm risky. I'm okay. I can tolerate a certain thing, because what's risky to you might be what's, you know, different than what risky means to me. So instead, you know, I try to ask my clients, okay, you know, you feel this way
if the market did this.
But exactly, I like to kind of role play a little bit and say, if the market were to repeat 2008, you know, God forbid, and some of those things were to happen, how much money could you stand to lose before you kind of have that not great, your sleep starts to get impacted and you start worrying and you start really having to dig into plan B, plan C, and plan D.
Right.
So really having those conversations is going to help you sleep better at night. It'll improve your relationship with your advisor and really just make it a more transparent and honest conversation. You don't want to have that surprise where you walk in and your advisor says, okay, great. Well, this quarter you're down 5%. And you sit there and think, well, I was only prepared to be down 1%. I thought we were on the same page. And you don't want to have any of those unfortunate surprises. So again, just, you know, be as honest as you can with your advisor, answer questions, you know, with keeping in mind your risk tolerance and your goals, and then just be open to really understanding what options are out there. And, you know, there's going to be a lot that you may not have heard of. So really make sure you understand them prior to getting involved with any of those.
And because we're approaching kind of the 30-minute mark and I don't want to take up too much of your time, is there anything else that you wish potential clients knew about working with an advisor that we haven't talked about?
Yeah, you know, I think what I often hear from clients is they'll say, oh, I didn't realize you did that. Or I didn't realize, you know, you guys behind the scenes are reading so much or are tracking these tickers or looking at everything. And what I would say is, you know, advisors often can help you with your insurance needs, can help you with your tax planning needs. Or if they can't, they know somebody that does. You know, we try to surround our clients with accountants that we trust and that we know have the same values and priorities as us. And, you know, conversely with lawyers, that also helps. So really try to look into what else your advisor does. And then, you know, I'm often surprised that clients realize, you know, don't know that behind the scenes we are reading and learning and meeting and networking with other industry professionals so that we are always prepared with, you know, what's on trend.
And you're always in the flow.
Yes, it changes by the day and by the minute, and this job today might look different than, you know, this time next week, just given what's going on with the government, the market, the industry, the economy. So we're always trying to stay on top of that and stay a step ahead so that, you know, we can make sure we're planning for that, you know, as mindfully as possible for our clients. And then I did want to jump in just before time. there's a couple great books that I really love that I wanted to make sure that, people
No,
heard
I think
of.
that's great.
So I have two with me. So I'll be sure to mention them and you can purchase them. But this one's probably my favorite, Smart Couples Finish Rich by David Bach.
Cool.
He also makes one, or wrote one called Smart Women Finish Rich. And the reason I love it is because I think he does such a phenomenal job of breaking down somewhat complex ideas and somewhat complex financial topics and just making them so conversational and so easy to understand. And there's a glossary actually in the back where you can dig and look and say, okay,
what does that word mean?
Yeah, or I'm most interested in actually understanding what is this 529 that everyone's talking about. I don't know what that is.
Right.
Go to the back and he'll tell you exactly the page that's on. So it really helps you efficiently manage your time. And again, I just think it's a wonderful resource for anybody, regardless of your level of financial knowledge. And then I know that you've mentioned this before, but Rich Dad, Poor Dad is phenomenal. Really, really good. And again, I'm just a big fan of books that try to empower people to understand their finances and don't necessarily read like a textbook. Don't make you feel like, oh, this is pulling, this is as boring as watching paint dry. Because it really could be a fascinating thing for you to get involved in. And I highly encourage everybody to own their financial health. And those two books are wonderful. And I'm
a huge finance nerd, so you don't have to, some finance books are more entertaining reads than watching Real Housewife reunions. And some, they read like something that like this couldn't actually be true, but it is what happened. And, what I liked about Rich Dad, Poor Dad is that it just challenges a lot of, I think, kind of commonplace everyday mentalities and is really kind of a mindset shift that, not necessarily going to an Ivy League college and setting out on that path with all of that debt. And if you don't get a career that's going to compensate you for that, that isn't necessarily the best path for everyone to take.
Right. It's a really great book. And the third one I don't have it with me, but it's called The 30-Minute Money Plan for Moms. So I thought that was really helpful or would be helpful for this audience. And it's written by an author whose name is Katie Hill. It's phenomenal because what she does is she really breaks down simple things that you can, little practical tips that you can actually implement and do in, 30 minutes a week. Just little things that are, I've actually adopted and brought into my life as well. And you don't have to be a mom to take advantage of her tips, but just it's written for someone that kind of has the shortage of time that moms have and in that schedule so that it kind of breaks it down. So, okay, your son or daughter is napping for 15 minutes. Here's something you can actually do to improve your life today. So
I think that's awesome.
Yeah, it's very akin to what you're doing and all of the amazing tips that you provide your audience. So it's just another thing that I think that this group would really benefit from. And it's a book, honestly, you can get on Amazon. And I would encourage people to check out your library. There's amazing resources right there for free. And it's just one of those, I know, kind of old-fashioned ideas, but go see what's there because you can learn so much.
And a lot of people may not know this, but if you have a library card, you can actually not even go to your library. You can sign up. So I don't know if you do this, but
I didn't know that.
Most public libraries now use, mine uses Overdrive. There's another one called Libby, and I think there's one called Hobbit. It depends on the service that your library uses. But you basically log in, you enter in your library card, and you can check out ebooks for free from your pajamas in your bedroom or the comfort of your couch. And they usually have like a 2-week window. And sometimes there's a limitation on the number of licenses. So you might have to like get on a waiting list to get it, just like a popular book at the library would be. But it's kind of amazing. And like I'm a huge reader and I used to spend a fortune. Yeah, so somebody just said I use Libby through my library, but you can also get audiobooks. And my library uses Overdrive, but it's amazing. And I spend way less on Kindle than I used to.
Yeah, that's the altogether great wins, and that is something that really speaks to my lifestyle now. I'm all about efficiency and delivery services, so that would be really helpful.
And I think, what Britton and I both share is that we believe there's a big female finance gap and we want to do whatever we can to bridge that. And I think especially for moms, whether you're working at home or you're working out of the home, or especially if you're a stay-at-home mom, I think a lot of times people think that they don't have any value to add financially. And that is so not right. I mean, by budgeting, by implementing some of the skills that you and I have talked about, by being the one who kind of takes the lead and ferreting out and researching investment advisors and setting up the meetings. I mean, you can add tremendous value to your family finances.
And, my last point I'll kind of tack on with that is, and I think you mentioned it too, believe it or not, statistics show that women are actually better investors than men.
Yep.
And I think, honestly, women just think so differently about finances than men. Women tend to
we're less aggressive. We're more risk averse.
Less direct.
Yeah,
yes.
We're less reactive.
Right. And I really think that goes to show, you can invest with an advisor. You can meet with somebody on your own. You don't need to wait until you're going with somebody else. And then I would say, even if you're at that point where you're going with your partner or your spouse or whatever that looks like, chime in, ask questions. You provide so much value to the conversation. And as most people know, women kind of think through things that men don't. So there's value to be had here. And I'm just so passionate about, women being able to take the lead or join
and talk
in this
about
conversation.
it.
Yeah, it's not taboo. I kind of laugh, so often we meet with our girlfriends or go out and we'll talk about anything else. And you bring up money and it's kind of hush.
And everybody gets all quiet. Yeah.
You don't need to compare finances, certainly not, but you can have a conversation around like, what do you guys do? Or do you have any great apps or good recommendations for recipes or tips or things that you follow?
Do you use a 529 plan? Or
women, we help each other out, and we are
we'll recommend the person to wax your eyebrows or give the best manicure, but why don't you recommend your financial advisor?
Exactly. So I'm just, kind of joining this whole movement or trying to help women understand that this is not something that's too scary for us to join and have that conversation. And at some point, the industry will figure that out. But in the meantime, there's a lot we can do to make our families better prepared, make our relationships better. And that's something too, you don't want to have your relationship come down to arguments about finances and money and all those things, especially when they can
be. And it's the number one source of arguments in marriage.
And I would
and I think it's
that
communication. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's amazing how much just even sitting down and talking through it. I kind of call it like having a little money date, once a month or something. And it's not it doesn't have to be long. Just, I kind of say, pick up a bottle of wine and chat through it and make that your conversation for the week or the month. And it's amazing how often you'll understand kind of where everybody's coming from and what spending looks like. And it really
and what even different people's knowledge base is. I think a lot of women trust that their husbands just know about money and know how to handle money better than they do. And that's not always true.
And we feel differently about it. Everybody was raised a certain way, and that really impacts how you invest and how you approach saving and spending and what you value and prioritize in your life. And so if your spouse or partner has been, raised to save every single penny, and conversely you were not, there's gonna be some friction.
There's going to be
when it comes to
friction.
Okay, how do you prioritize spending your time? Do you dine out or not? And what do you do in terms of making investment purchases, whether it's what kind of home you're looking for or where you'd like to live, and even comes down to schooling for your children and everything. So you can't over communicate on this topic. And I guess my whole point is speak up. You can do it, and you don't
be
have
part of the conversation.
Yes, and even lead it if that's your prerogative. But that's just something I'm incredibly passionate about, and why I created my blog, and why I'm in this industry, and why I follow people like you.
And probably why we found each other.
Yes, exactly. So thank you very much for having me. I'm so thrilled to be a part of this, and obviously I'm available to anybody for follow-up questions, and you can always reach out via Instagram. Financial Advise Her is the handle, or you can email me. I just, I'm passionate about this, like I've said. So thank you for including me.
Yeah, thank you so much. And for those who missed it live or missed part of it, as soon as Instagram lets me, I will post it in my stories. One thing I discovered is that when we do these joint lives, it doesn't let me download it. But I figured out a hack. I can play it on my phone and screen record it.
There you go.
So I will download it, and I will turn in kind of our dialogue into a blog post that summarizes a lot of our discussion and the questions that we talked about. But look up Financial Advisor if you don't follow Britton already. She shares a lot of great, inspiring stuff like I do, and also talks kind of specific questions. And if you guys have questions, that look in my stories. It'll be up for the next 24 hours. So thank you again. I hope you have signs of spring soon.
Likewise.
And we'll see you soon.
All right, sounds good. Thank you, Megan, and thank everybody for tuning in.
All right, bye-bye.